All right. Call to order the meeting, roll call at 5:30 PM. Madeline, you want to do the roll call?
Yep. Mullendorf.
Here.
Cornfield, here. Graham.
Here.
Gunn.
Here.
Bordeaux.
Here.
Thorson. Tupin.
And me. Here, sorry.
Okay, we have a quorum. All right. First item on the agenda is citizens' comments and matters within the board's jurisdiction. Everybody has a maximum 3-minute time period. So any comments from the citizens out there? Teresa?
Roger, I was wondering if you wanted me to wait till the end, or,
It's up to you.
No, I've got
That's your choice.
all right, well, so, I'll say I'm here to represent the, Red Lodge Dark Skies and the Woods Observatory, and just to follow up on what was discussed at prior Parks Board was the idea that there would be a letter to City Council about, the light trespass and light pollution from the county buildings over towards the park and into the area. And so that resulted in, as maybe not everybody knows, but the opening of a discussion between city and county about whether or not anything could be done. But I'm here to request that, I would appreciate the original idea that was approved upon, which was a letter from the Parks Board to City Council, that there was an issue and that we would like to have it looked into further. The idea there is that it shines a little bit more light on it, puts it in a public forum, apart from just the Parks Board, not that you guys aren't doing the important work here. But you know, that's something that you had approved, and I'd like to see it transpire.
Okay. And also discussed in the last meeting was the idea to facilitate a meeting between the interested
Right.
parties involved in that. And that is something I intend on trying to figure out how we can do that. Kind of wanted to hold off a little bit. This is not necessarily really a lame excuse, but I really kind of thought it'd be best to hold off until after we got the elections and everything behind us. And people are a little bit settled down and maybe their schedules are more open. And so I'd like to work with a member of our board here to try to facilitate that meeting. We'll identify who the interested parties are, and maybe you can give us some help with that as well.
Thank you, yeah, that sounds good.
All right? Any other comments?
Just to kind of follow up on that, I think that was the right approach on that, and again, just identifying who those parties are, I'd be happy to help with that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Somebody else back here raise your hand?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Okay.
Okay. I'm Lindsay Hoffman. I came by, to, talk about and thank you guys for considering preparing and, looking into the tennis court. I'm the high school tennis court, or the high school tennis coach, and have been for the last 4 or 5 years. This is my assistant, Rachel. She's a huge addition. We've got a growing and successful team at the high school, and I just am really grateful that the city is considering repairing the courts because they're in dire need. So if I had a wish list and suggestions, I'd be happy to help. Comment on drainage that I've seen, the court surface with the blacktop and asphalt and all the cracks, and the nets and poles are in really bad shape. And just, I'm excited to see where this goes and help move it forward. It's important to me and important to our girls and the community. I'm really grateful to be here tonight and see it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments?
So, Nick, Patty, and on behalf of Beartooth Trails, we're going to install our final sign down as a part of like the Coal Miners Park, like trail stewardship grant that we received from the state of Montana. We have a exhibit sign that's going to go down along like Rock Creek. You guys remember that picnic table is like right at the bottom there, kind of like right as it flattens out. I'm gonna finally get that in this weekend.
Great.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a riparian zone sign. So it's like a little like exhibit sign. So, you know, there's like one on top of the airport loop. There's one at the Coal Miners Park.
sign.
Yeah, like an interpretive sign. and it was part of the Trail Stewardship Grant, which we have to close out next month, and so, you know, I inherited this project, and we're gonna go and put it in, so.
And it's gonna be this weekend?
Yeah, I think Saturday is like the day the board's gonna go out and get it in.
Great, looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a really nice sign.
Mayor,
Did-
Is that coordinated with Mike? Are you
No,
guys working?
It's not on the cap, anywhere on the cap.
Is it in city limits though?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you just follow up and let him know what's happening there? Please, thank you.
did you have a comment?
No, Nick, did you run that by Parks Board before?
No, I mean, I
That
think
might
it
be
was.
a good thing to do, that's all.
Okay, yeah, I mean, again, like I inherited this, so I mean, it was in the plan that we submitted to the state of Montana in 2019, I believe, so like, it's in that, I don't know what the current,
I know.
the Parks Board
Yeah,
then did it,
see how it
so.
fell through, but we didn't talk about
Okay,
that.
yeah.
I don't, did you?
I wasn't here in 2019.
You're right.
Could have even, like, I don't know, this is a long-standing
Yeah.
project, you know, like, I mean, you know, Russ Purcell going in and totally changing all that stuff, so, it was
Yeah.
part of that.
It's all a good thing, just,
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Citizens? Okay. If there aren't any, we'll move on to the action items. The first one is approval of the consent agenda and the minutes of the October 2nd, 2024 Parks Board meeting. We have a motion?
wasn't here, yeah.
We really need a motion if we're gonna continue, don't we?
I'll second.
Okay, good. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, motion's approved. Now we can move forward in the agenda. Under discussion items, the first one, item 2 under discussion items is discussion with possible action regarding Beartooth Trails Association's proposed pump track improvements at Coal Miners Memorial Park. And we have Luke Russell. Is he here? Luke?
Sir. You ready for me?
We're ready for you.
All right, y'all. Hi, I'm Luke Russell. I'm a volunteer, with the, Beartooth Rec Trails. I'm gonna be presenting today on behalf of them. Thanks for having us, Parks Board. Really appreciate the time tonight, and Mayor, we really appreciate you guys taking a look at this. So, I want this just to be, if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop, raise your hand, we can just kind of talk about it. I want this to basically be an education so everyone knows what we're thinking, so we're all on the same page, pretty much. So I think it's a good time to do that, especially now that the cap has kind of stopped all work, we can really dial in what we want to do up there. So, I moved out here a few years ago, and, the part of the world I came from was, Northwest Washington State. I've got little kids, and out there, pump tracks are a big, exciting thing for families to bring them together, to ride bikes and just kind of hang out. And we noticed just in our learning about this awesome little town that there was a bike park, sort of, that was started and then kind of left, alone during COVID, and even a pump track up at the top of Coal Miners, which my kids immediately fell in love with. And then as I became part of Beartooth Rec Trails, we were like, hey, why don't we see if we can't take this to the next level and make it a legit thing for the community. So thanks for running this for me. We can go next page. So this is presentations about the bike park revitalization, basically bringing it back to being a nice, usable space, and also building a pump track on what, there actually was a pump track there at one point. It was just really small and it kind of defunct. We'd like to build a real nice one. Again, I'm Luke Russell, Navy veteran. I live here in town. You guys know Nick. And then we're also doing this on behalf on Thomas Clark, who's on the board.
He's on the, like, virtual call.
Oh, nice. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so revitalize the existing bike park. We'd love to do that. There's a bike park. Does anyone know there's a bike park up at Coal Miners? Is that shocking news to anyone? I mean, that's okay. A lot of people don't know that in this town, that there's actually a bike park up there. It's got a couple nice little up trails that go up to the top, and then it goes down the backside towards the river. Bike parks generally have a way to teach people to go up and then to ride down, and then they let you know, like, hey, this way down is harder than this way down, and you can pick your flavor. Like, I just want to wind down at the bottom, or I want to do some jumps, whatever. Our bike park essentially has like an easy way down and then kind of a middle and Right now, it is in pretty good shape. Nick went out there this summer and weed whacked it and just got it into basic riding shape, but it hasn't been really focused on as far as trail building. So there is some trail degradation there. The jumps aren't as big as they used to be, et cetera. And then the pump track itself is, it was totally defunct. We actually, last summer, we basically skid steered all the dirt into one pile. So if you guys go to the top of Coal Miners now, you'll see that there's just like a big mound of dirt on the northeast corner right there, and it's in a flat spot. That was essentially to move all the dirt out of the way and to prep the space for a future pump track. Next slide, please. Yep, so why are we doing this? I've kind of already alluded to that. We're just looking for a place, so Red Lodge has some amazing mountain bike trails, but they are, I would say, advanced intermediate to super advanced, which means how do you bridge the gap from, hey, I'm this amazing mountain biker, but I've got a 7-year-old that wants to ride with dad or mom, and there's not a lot of in-between. There are some. A lot of the in-betweens, though, right now are also shared trails with joggers and walkers. And so, oftentimes beginner bikers don't know how to commingle with other people. So giving them their own space to ride their bikes and kind of learn it out amongst the tutelage of adults, either family members or friends, is kind of what bike parks do. You go there like, this is a bike park. We're going to teach people how to ride here, and everyone's aware of that. Pump tracks along with that, usually they go hand in hand. Yep, kind of like we're talking about there, good for young people don't ride a lot. It is usually a gathering space in communities, so when I was back in Washington, we would take Grandpa to the bike park. Like, Grandpa can't go with me when I go ride Bear Track or Ingalls up there, but he surely can go up the hill in Coal Miners and sit down in a seat and see his grandkids riding around and having fun and taking breaks. So it's really a cross-generational gathering point for everybody, both bike parks and pump tracks. And just to real quickly iterate, bike park is kind of like the overarching, this is a bike area. Pump tracks usually fit inside that. So they'll be like a piece of a bike park. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. Social focal point. It reduces bike traffic in other spots. So my kids are also into skateboarding, and we have an amazing skate park. So it's one of the best things I love about this town. But there's no place for the kids in that age range who want to kind of do like jumpy, flowy stuff. That's a natural spot for the bike riders that want to go too. And so you've kind of got the confluence of bikers and skaters there, which that would separate them a little bit. So it makes those spaces, I think, a little bit more enjoyable. Next slide, please. Okay, so when I was living in Northwest Washington, what we found was that the bike parks, they really became a destination for families. And what I mean by that is people who own bikes generally have cars to transport bikes and generally have the funds to also pay for lunch, maybe buy some knickknacks, and so support food trucks, stuff like that. So we found that a lot of the bike parks and the pump tracks became like weekend gathering points where the families would all make friends there and be like, hey, we're going to be back here next weekend. Let's go do some lunch. They'd go into the local town. They'd have some food. So there'd be spillover from just the bike park itself. There'd also be a lot of benefits that the local communities had. It became a positive experience for everybody because it's a lot of young people. It's very inclusive. It's inexpensive. If all you have is a bike, if you can just get there, that's it. It's free, right? So it doesn't cost anybody anything. So you don't have to be affluent to go there. So if you have a bike and the energy to pedal, you can go there by yourself. Lots of business expansion can happen. The bike park in Bellingham, which I'm about to show some pictures of, it started as it was a landfill, so it's their version of what we've got, and they built a teeny pump track on it, and the city just went bonkers, and so they just expanded it. So when we look at it, it's going to be like, wow, we're not going to build that. It's next generation. But then ultimately, they got permission from the local, they had a parking lot next to it, just like they have here at Coal Miners, and they started getting food trucks there permitted by the city. They had beer trucks permitted by the city, and at some point, I noticed this last year, they built like a mini stage, and now they're having concerts in the evenings, and it's just been a really nice boon for the city. Next slide, please. Yep, obvious stuff here, fosters an active, healthy lifestyle. One thing I like about it is, for here, is that a lot of the healthy, active lifestyle you have to really get out of the city and get out and have a big plan to go do it, you can jam over to Coal Miners Bike Park on a lark, quickly go for a bike ride with your kids. I've been there and back in 30 minutes before, right? We burned some energy. It was just no skin off our nose, didn't impact our day. So it'll provide for an in-city physical experience for folks of all ages. Yeah, we talked about Center Point, bike rodeos. Those are things some towns do as their bike parks get more, you know, hey, if it became a thing, be like, the bike park in Red Lodge is amazing, we should go. Groups will put together basically an event where they'll, you know, hey, we're gonna have races or whatever. There's so much you can do with it. Yeah, and just in general, it showcases Red Lodge. That's not already obvious. Next slide, please. Okay, so I don't know if you can really see it here. It's kind of washed out on the screen, but essentially what we're looking at is we're looking south, and you've got all their pump tracks. And so the way it works is you would show up and park, and on the weekends, this giant parking lot fills up with food trucks. This is like their permanent stuff. It's kind of like a container city, essentially, because they have people there all the time. And you just basically ride, the idea of a pump track is, think of it like a BMX track, like in the 80s. Same idea, right? So you get pedal a little bit, but then you spend a lot of time just kind of pumping the bike. If the pump track's built properly, you essentially can just use the pumping motion of the bike starting from a high point to make it around the whole thing. So it teaches how to go around corners, how to go up and over berms, jumps, etc. Next slide, please. Yeah, here's just more stuff. This is looking towards the city. So theirs is quite detailed. These pictures aren't the best on the screen. That one looks a little bit better. But you can see, you just like ride up and over, and you can do jumps, or you don't have to. These are examples of tabletops, which are nice and safe because it can teach you how to jump without having to actually clear anything, right? So you can jump, land on top, which is great for beginning riders. Anyhow, this is kind of what they've done. Again, this is next level. You can see we have, this is a stage right here facing that way. And this started just like what we're talking about. It's a small little pump track. And I'm not proposing, hey, let's just make Red Lodge this crazy bike destination. But it's definitely, people really enjoy them and they encourage this kind of growth. Next slide, please. Yep. As part of, these are much better pictures. So little kid here, you know, 7 or 8 years old, this is kind of what we're looking at. They're just going up and over bumps, they come around corners, etc., and they can practice and put together different kind of lines that they want. Some bike parks will build wood features, which are kind of fun, especially if it's wet season. You know, the wood, even though it takes a lot of upkeep over time, or to some degree, depending on the wood you're using, it allows for spots where it's not always muddy. Next slide. Oh, actually, if you go back to that slide real quick, my apologies. This right here, that's actually a bench for people to sit on. So a lot of times you'll have spots around the pump track where, again, grandpa or mom, dad, you can take a break because, you know, kids go bonkers for hours, and after a little bit you might just be tired of it. So usually they have wood benches that are very crudely built. Think like railroad ties with a base on it, you know, so it's like you're out the material for a railroad tie and someone with a chainsaw. Next slide, please. More pictures of pump tracks and kind of just a general idea. You know, so this was all built on a flat surface. You can kind of see the original surface here. And then they brought in dirt and shaped the dirt features from there. Most likely with machines and then hand tamped and shaped. Next slide. Okay, so we're spending a lot of time on the pump track, but this whole plan is to also include a revitalization of the bike park. The pump track is going to be the bulk of the work. If we're ever greenlit to do this and move forward, it's just because it's going to go from zero to being built. Whereas the bike park already largely exists. It just needs a couple trail days to get it rehabbed, and then probably a couple build days to actually reshape berms and jumps. We're not proposing a pump track on any new space. The one we want to do would be exactly on the footprint of the old one, which is already cleared off and leveled right now. So on the northeast corner of Coal Miners, it's roughly 100 feet by 84 feet. Next slide, please. Right here, we kind of dialed in, right? So north is up in this. This is top of Coal Miners. This is soccer field. This little spot up here in the corner is what I'm talking about. So zoomed in here, you can see it's got the old trails around it. This is basically the 100 by 84 spot right there. So that's where the pump track would be. It's just on the north side of this access road that goes around the entire entire soccer field?
Trail.
Trail.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Next slide. So what are we actually proposing building? So for the bike park, we purchased, the plans called Telvia pump track plans, or by Lead Bike. They're very inexpensive, and it's a good, nice, easy layout, both for easy to build, for people who haven't, don't have a ton of time and volunteers and money to do it. And it's also a very easy pump track to maintain and for folks to ride. Next slide, please. This is generally what it looks like. And the idea of pump tracks is a continual flow, like it never ends. You have to stop and turn around and start over. You just keep on going, right? So these are basically, if you're looking from the side, this is what it looks like. So you got some rollers, you go around some berms right there. There's going to be some crossover sections. So it's nothing too crazy. If you're into numbers, it talks about radii and dirt required, et cetera. We're looking for about 120 cubic yards of dirt to make this happen. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. The BRTA, myself, and some volunteers have been working on this. We have a skid steer at our disposal, a Mini-X and E50, which is small, but not like the smallest of Mini-X's. We actually have a commercial dirt filter separator. The dirt on site isn't really, that used to be in the pump track, is in terribly poor shape, but I think we can salvage about half of it if you run it through our dirt separator. We have a generator to run the dirt filter on site. We have a jumping jack compactor. We have hand tools and the BRTA based on how much, we can set up volunteers for the whole project. Next slide, please. So this is what we need. This is our ask for the city. Besides just permission to do this, we need more dirt. When you're building pump tracks, the goal is you build a pump track and then it's built so well that down the road it doesn't fall apart, or it just takes longer. And what that really comes down to is the quality of the soil that goes into the pump track. So if there's a lot of natural material like weeds, grass, and rocks, those all percolate to the top or create holes, which means ongoing maintenance is going to be more exhaustive. And we prefer to build this thing, have it done right the first time, so it's rock hard dirt, doesn't have any of those problems, and then it's just very minimal maintenance over time. So with that being said, that's one of the reasons we just completely demolished the original pump track, because it was built with terrible dirt. So we're going to take what's there and we'd like to filter it. We need a plate compactor. That might be on our rehab list. We're in talks with some folks right now that might be willing to get one. So having access to a plate compactor would make this go a lot quicker. Water source, it'd be awesome, because this is probably obviously going to get built in the dry season, so we're thinking like July is probably optimal, so it's now dry now. We'll need some kind of water source, either tapping into the spigots on site that are in the soccer fields, or some type of water buffalo that we can even put in the back of a truck from the city. So diesel for the, it's going to be all volunteer running these skid steers and all the equipment, and all the equipment's going to get donated also. But we'd love to get some gas paid for those devices, diesel equipment. If there's power on site, that would make it helpful, but not required. We can do stuff with the generator. We just don't know what's up there. Yeah, as far as that's concerned. More volunteers are always better. We would love to have someone who is basically, this is from the city, that this becomes part of their project. It's like they help with the pump track, they help with the bike park, it's just on there. And I don't know who that would be, but we'd love to have a body with us when we build this thing and rehab it, so they basically get the knowledge of what went into building this, and therefore from then on, they can help maintain it or pass that knowledge along to other city employees. So it's not just a BRTA project that is built and beautiful, and then as we try to do other stuff, it gets not taken care of because the city has no skin in the game. Generally, the way these projects go is they get built by a combination of the city and volunteers, and then the city usually takes over the maintenance, but also gets the volunteers back involved. Does that make sense? So the city would be like, hey, such and such is, the pump track, you're the pump track bike park guy, and that individual is like, all right, we need to do an annual cleanup day, and then we want to do a reshape all the dirt day, and then they coordinate with the local organization like BRTA, and we come in with the volunteers, and we just totally fix it up. And then just some discussion or ideas on if we want to do any kind of seating. right out of the gate. We can just build this thing and it can just be a pump track and there's no other stuff. It would be pretty awesome if there was like maybe a couple wood benches, you know, so grandpa can take a chill and just relax and hang out with the family. Next slide, please. So we have 150 cubic yards of unfiltered dirt. The plan, we need 120. This is totally spitballing based on my understanding of that dirt, which I've worked with a little bit, is I think we, might be able to get 75 yards out of it, but if we plan on only getting 50, we essentially need 70 more yards of clean fill dirt. Baldwin quoted us at $130 a yard and a $930 delivery fee. So if this is worst case scenario, in my opinion, that we would need that. I'm hoping it'll be a lot less than that, but at Baldwin's pricing us about 10 grand to get the dirt delivered on site. So I just want to put everybody on the same page. And we're not necessarily saying, hey, city, we want you to pay for all this. I just want everyone to know what the dollar is that we're going to work towards filling if that's the case. However that looks like. All right, next slide, please. So the build itself, we're talking 2 weeks, 10 actual work days for 2 to 3 individuals. It could be much shorter if we had more volunteer bodies. The VRTA, you know, if this thing is greenlit, we figure out how to fund it, et cetera. You know, we'll turn the ISO on from the VRTA to this project, and we'll get people on board, and we'll make it a thing, part of our schedule for the summer. It'd be nice to have about 3 months, you know, that we could say, all right, it's a go, let's get it going, and, you know, we could get it done 3 months later, we can start the build. So we're thinking, whatever summer this gets approved to start, which sounds like it's probably not gonna be this next summer, just based on logistics of the capping being fixed. You know, I'd say March, April approval date where the city's like, yeah, let's do it. Even if it's like, yeah, it sounds great, let's do it, but we're not giving you any money or whatever, you can start now. So that's what we're looking for. Next slide. Yeah, we talked about it. Ideally, we build it, we could have a city personnel with us that's involved, and then the city takes it over from there as far as just being the head honcho, and we help. Essentially what it'll take is an annual cleanup day, which is just like a typical trail cleanup, right? Weed whacking bushes back, fixing whatever Mother Nature's done. So I think most years, especially unless it's just heinously wet as far as like runoff, I imagine it'll probably just take a day or 2 maximum to do that. Yep. And then if we want to upgrade the future, generally these pump tracks, if they become popular, they not only they stay nice, but they get added to, i.e., our pump track's not going to take up that whole footprint, that 120 by 84. So there's room to put in wood features, to add little side things, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. Okay, so basic wrap up, guys. So the plan is in place. We've got largely all the big objects coordinated. There's some equipment we need, diesel, dirt, personnel. There's probably some funding that needs to happen, and that'd be TBD. And then just a start date and a thumbs up from the city. Next slide. All right, that's all I got. Do we have any questions? No, it's fast and furious there.
Questions from the board?
So have you looked into grants for raising the funds?
I mean, yeah, but unfortunately, at this point, like, you can't do anything with a grant when we don't know when we can start, you know? Like, we let a few grants go by this year where this would have been like bullseye, I would have said, but, you know, they want shovel-ready projects, and it's not a shovel-ready project right now.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can do, but we just need a more, you know, we applied for a couple grants, and it was, here's the general scope, and they're like, no, we need like full details, when's your start date? Because they have their pipeline of money, and they're like,
Yeah.
we're gonna fund these guys, you know, so I think that's definitely someplace we should
Yeah, I mean, I think,
wrap it over,
you know,
go down.
if we get a green light, when, I mean, it's like, yeah, I think the money's out there. It's like,
Mhm.
we find it, I see these numbers go by, and I'm like, oh, man, there's so many, like, for like bikes specifically, like Fox Factory or stuff, where I think they would really, really like this project, so.
So, I mean, historically, we have kind of given the green light. I mean, the pump track before, yes, it was rudimentary.
Yeah,
Mike needed us to wait to see what happens with DEQ.
Mhm.
So we don't have a start date But I mean, I think as far as using the existing.
I might be able to speak to that.
Okay,
I'm kind of losing my voice, I got a cold.
okay.
Been talking with DEQ on the west side mine drain as well, and that is kind of, took the wind out of their sails.
A priority now?
And, I got a feeling that, whatever they were looking at up in Coal Miners Park is kind of off the table. Plus, we went up there and moved all that dirt, kind of helped with some of that runoff up there for the zoo. So I got a feeling that the hold we had isn't that important anymore. Just something is considered. I caught in here late, I guess fundamentally from Public Works standpoint, the pump track is up there, terrible.
Yeah, it's gone now.
Oh, you took it out?
Yeah, last summer it got pulled out.
And
Was terrible.
moving forward, it has to be high quality.
Yep.
And
We agree.
in that regard, I encourage you to talk with me.
Yeah.
We have dirt up there, that big pile.
Yeah. Yeah, every time I see
A lot of
that,
that
yeah.
screen dirt from, that's dug out of the ground, so it's weed free. Toward the end, they lost their screen, so it was high graded, there's still some 3-inch plus in there, so it would need some screen.
Yeah, we have a great commercial level screener.
And that would be available,
How much is in there, do you think that will be left over for like a project like ours?
more than you need.
Really? I mean, that's,
That would make that easy.
yeah, that's $10,000.
Well, but you're gonna need more than what you got up there.
Okay,
I mean, you are.
yeah, that's fantastic.
There's like 2x4s when you're building a house. You never know.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's a long pole in the tent, I think it's the all
I mean,
Yeah,
150 yards of dirt.
okay.
Lake compactor, we could probably help out with. Water, I don't know how much you need,
I think it depends how hot and dry it is, you know?
and that would be a conversation with the soccer field. Do you have spigots up there?
No, we have the wellhead down at the
Yeah, the
bottom.
well.
I mean, probably the best thing would to have a little carboy or something and fill it up down there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Don't we have a,
Run it up.
truck with a tank in it for
Yeah,
watering the
no,
trees and stuff
That's why
too?
I asked,
Yeah.
it's only 300 gallon tank, but, and there's a hydrant right down where we fill it up, that's right,
Yeah,
that's the corner down there.
I think that would be I think it'd be satisfactory, right? We're talking about if
That's
it's so
easy.
dry that we can't get the dirt to compact, we're just gonna need to go over it with the water. Does it have a sprayer? You can kind of,
It's got a pump on it.
Okay.
Rig it up.
yeah,
I guess going back to the other parts, what's your plans with weeds? Cause anytime you stir up dirt, you're gonna get weeds. There's already knapweed up there.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, one, it's gonna get ridden.
Cause I don't
Right.
wanna get stirred up and
Yeah.
then we got a new weed problem.
Yeah, yeah,
So it wasn't so much the tops that were ridden last time that got all weedy and grassy, it's the parts that don't get it,
Yeah,
all
like
the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, all
I
the
mean,
stuff in
it's
between,
gonna
like
have
not
to
in
be
the
on
track, yeah.
Routine spray.
Yep, I agree, yeah, so as we were sort of discussing, it's gonna take at least in the beginning of the, the growing, but it's fully dried out. Around here, that's usually mid-July, there's gonna be a good once over the whole bike park with a weed whacker, other weed mitigation, if we need to spray, that's fine too. And then it's probably gonna take another day later in the summer, come August, when the weeds are really growing like crazy.
And then the other thing that, when you say the city takes over, and then you also mentioned there would be PRTA volunteer days.
Yep.
I kind of feel like this is your guys' thing.
Yeah,
You're bringing the city,
yep,
you guys should be in it.
That was my question, Mike. The the concern I had about having an employee be kind of, involved in the project liaison.
Well, I
Is that an
would see
issue?
that, I mean,
That's
you know, like I said.
exactly what we're talking about.
Okay,
You guys, let's talk, and we
Yep.
can figure this out.
Sounds great.
I'll be the liaison, but I think in terms of the annual maintenance, you know, making sure it's still holding together, and like I said in the beginning, you know, I had the same conversation with the baseball commission. I will 100% support these projects, but they have to be high quality.
Yeah,
They gotta be good. They gotta make Red Lodge proud,
yeah,
so.
that's our whole intent,
well, if they're high
And
quality,
it's gotta stay that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
if they're high quality,
I don't want the
that's-
city taking over.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is your guys' baby, you guys take it.
Okay, yeah, I agree with most of that. I think it's the norm in most communities is that the city has some skin in the game as far as, like, they at least have a person who's like, this is the pump track guy.
So,
Okay.
I'd like to speak to that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share the love with you. So, we have an observatory on a public park. Teresa helped raise the money to build it. They're working diligently to maintain it. Lindsay, I was just gonna say something about a project, the pool.
Yeah.
Is that a city, it's a city-owned piece of property, but we went into a 10-year program to raise, they organized a committee, and we're talking about maybe having a little more oversight, but it has a transition plan. Soccer raised all the money to build the soccer field. It was in the master plan to have a soccer field up there for the city, but it wasn't gonna happen if the city had to do it.
Sure.
And we have an MOU that basically has a potential for transition in it. So we're maintaining it, we're hoping that maybe the city would help start mowing a little bit in the future years. We'll still look at the sprinklers, take care of things like that, have a budget. And I think that you have to kind of look at it that way.
Yeah.
So, just
yeah.
in all fairness, and towards what you're saying, like having that personnel there as kind of that liaison, someone who has the knowledge
Yep.
that you guys are sharing.
Yep.
And then essentially you guys are eyes and ears, like Mike's always been really good about working with the different MOU holders and the different organizations and doing what is needed at a city level, but in terms of, as you already mentioned, or, hey, cleanup days, the RTA can help coordinate and bring in.
Absolutely.
And so, like,
Yeah.
when, I think you guys are saying the same thing, just maybe misconstruing it a tad, am I?
You're looking at me and.
I'm just looking around the room.
And in fairness,
Yeah.
we have some budget that Parks Board makes some recommendations on how we use that to maintain and or add new projects. And I think we just need to recognize that that's a finite amount of money. So, and part of it is, we're gonna be outsourcing or hiring somebody to go up and hit it once a month and sprinkle it or roll it or whatever. I think we need to realize that comes from that finite bucket, and so we have to prioritize where we're gonna do things, as we take on mowing, as we take on,
I think also just recognizing that having one dedicated human from the city for maintaining that pump track is not going to be a thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be, the city has an understanding of how it needs to be maintained, hits it when it looks like it needs some love, but otherwise, it's on BRTA to truly, like, monitor and make sure that those pieces are happening.
Yeah.
and we've stepped in and helped with some past trails and stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
And part of it, like I said, to say that it's part of what the city, now, with Beartooth Trails, you're welcome, Nick, there's some different, there's some
BTA.
separate ownership stuff in there from like the pool or some of the other parks things. There's a lot of things, like if the city gets involved, we're not changing staff and manpower to address that. So I'll use something really obvious. We're coming up on winter, snow. So if we have businesses that aren't cleaning the snow out in front of their shops on Broadway, which is required to be cleaned up, it needs to be cleaned up, and the city will take that responsibility. but we won't do it with our existing staff because we don't have that manpower. We'll hire it out and it'll show up on your taxes. And so, like I said, we have money set aside for the maintenance of parks. That was the big trouble we got in years ago, was we built things and never have any resources allocated to maintain them. And so when we did the resort tax, we modified that. I think it's just I think there needs to be an understanding of what are the needs going to be to do it. And we go to Mike, and Mike says, we can do that, we can't do that, it's a need, so we can't do that. Does Beartooth Trails want to step in and do that? Or do we need to allocate some of the resources in the budget? And that's part of that pool of money that we're allocating. Yes, we're prioritizing, so this gets there. Mike, anything I said there that causes you heartburn, or are you okay with that?
No, I'm good with that. I think I would just encourage you, Nick, and I don't know.
I'm Luke.
Luke,
Yeah.
Get in touch with me. And
Yes, we should do
go
that,
through some
Jeff.
details, and, I think in the end, we should have a little pump track MOU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And,
it's very right now.
you know, just to address what we just talked about, and I think, and, you know, my thing again is, it's gotta be good,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
We're gonna do it, I don't want to pile of dirt up there,
Yep,
with rock.
no.
We-
Yeah, and like I think it's just before you came in, we were talking about the level of the build here, is if we do it correctly with the right, and the dirt's high quality, then it's gonna minimize the upkeep later on, because it'll minimize the weeds are able to grow, the degradation of rocks coming to the surface, you know, of grass below it, if the dirt rots out. You know, so hopefully this project, the way we envision it, is the bike park has a cleanup day sometime in July where we do basic maintenance, and then there's another day somewhere around there to fix things that really got somehow broken in the wintertime. And then, so we're talking 2 days, maybe a third down the line, along with the weed mitigation if you find it popping up in between. And if we gotta, you know, put down gravel or something, you know, that's something we can talk about, that you find is good material to suppress weeds around here. I think that's definitely something we can talk about, in particular if we save so much money on free dirt.
Yes.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I have another question, and Mike's here now, so I'll ask it. You spent a lot of time talking about the pump track and kind of fixing that stuff up there. My recollection, from when DEQ was out here, and again, I don't know how their position has changed on this, but one of my bigger concerns, or one of my outstanding worries that I haven't heard us address, is the trails going up and down that face to get there. Because that's the stuff where we're down into the coal and we've got problems. And that, my observation, DEQ wasn't freaking out about what's up on top. They're freaking out about the trails to get there. And you're talking about going up and then 2 different ways to get down. Has that been built into this plan at all, or?
So that already exists, right? So the front side of the coal miners you have steps going up, which you could walk your bike on that. That's actually what most people do. Then there's an up trail just to the north side or left side of that as you're going uphill.
The big black stripe?
Yep,
Yeah.
and that's where the biggest degradation of the whole cap, in my opinion, is. It's like almost all coal tailings,
Mhm.
right there on the surface.
That's right.
And
so-
is there a
Like I
plan
dug
on how?
into with pickaxes when they built the trail.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we had thin cover there,
Yeah,
but that was done
Yeah.
on purpose to create the
Yeah.
trails.
And I think that needs to be part of the plan, that we need, and that's definitely gonna take coordination with Mike and in turn possibly DEQ. But to me, you can't build the,
Yeah.
you know, without the path on how to get there.
Mhm.
Because
yeah.
it's a given that that's gonna
Yeah.
get used and
Yeah.
degrade further.
I mean, if that, yeah, I mean, those trails could be, we redid them last year, so they're actually in really pretty decent shape for an up trail. They're very tight though, they're meant for like little kids' bikes, honestly.
I'm just saying, from my observation, the assessment of somebody who
Yeah.
rides bike and the assessment of somebody whose job is DEQ
Yeah,
ain't the same. They
They don't like being that cold.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I mean, that up trail, if that's a problem, it can just go away. If people can walk their bikes up the steps, that's perfectly acceptable. And then the trails for the bike park that are, south of the steps, there's not really any coal showing there, but I think if there was, we could easily cover those.
I think we just need to coordinate, and maybe
Okay.
that is the solution, is that trail goes away and we
Yeah.
put up a sign that says, please walk,
Yeah,
but my request is that you coordinate with, Mike, our Public Works Director, who in turn will make sure we're in the good graces of DEQ. They bring an awful lot of money in to help fix and solve these things.
Okay,
And the last thing we want to do is do anything that shuts that down, because we need them when we need them.
yeah. Sounds good.
So, yeah, like I said, you know, get with me.
Okay.
Figure it out.
I have one
Okay.
question, formality. So we have an MOU for all of coal miners. It's got baseball, softball, soccer, disc golf, and it says Red Lodge Mountain Biking. So is that gonna be BTA?
Yeah, I don't even know what that, never heard of that before.
They had no
Didn't know what you
responsibilities in here, but,
Yeah.
okay. So this whole thing needs to be revamped anyway, so we'll have to add it in.
So you're suggesting not a separate pump track MOU? or
Unless we break this
to
up,
wrap it in
unless
there?
we decide to break this up. It
I guess we
looks
need,
best to just be in here.
we just take a look at that MOU then.
Yeah.
And I think it's also nice to have all parties involved kind of in the same understanding of what everyone's, what everyone has up there, because I know that springtime I get to hear about javelins and
Yeah.
soccer fields, so like, again, I think it's good to have everybody on the same page, literally, like, so.
Yeah, I think we should move the new soccer MOU in here so we don't have two, and then it would be all in one place.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
comprehensive one. What,
Okay.
let's wrap this subject up. So where we're at right now is that you're gonna meet with Mike
Yep.
and come up with some
Sounds like
ideas.
next step.
Look what you need as far as materials,
Yeah,
what Mike can provide in the way of
Yeah.
assistance and
We'll
maybe
get-
a
we'll get
timeline.
some agreement
Yeah.
before we get a go-ahead.
Right, and maybe a timeline as well.
Mhm.
Once we come to an agreement, we'll
Okay.
get a timeline and go ahead.
Yeah, and we can address it again at
yeah,
that point.
sounds great.
All right.
So
thank
Luke,
you.
I had one last question
Yeah.
real quickly. What does Lee's recommend for runoff?
They have no runoff discussion. He's-
Okay, so
he's
you're gonna have
strictly-
to come up with some of that too.
Yeah,
Okay, because you have the trail mostly right there that you wouldn't want to impact.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to, you know, make sure there's proper drainage, or, yeah, the way it's built up, there's not low spots.
yeah, the pump track itself's gonna be rock hard dirt, so it's not gonna, water's largely not gonna permeate into it, so it's gonna shed, around it. So, but the goal was not to have it butt up right next to that, what we're calling a trail, which is basically a dirt or gravel road.
It's a BRTA trail. It is a
I know.
trail. It's actually not an access road. It's not a
Yeah.
vehicle access road.
Was yours.
Okay.
It's a walking
Yeah.
path that BRTA created.
Yeah, so I think that the biggest, we just need to make sure it's not right next to that, so it doesn't run off, you know, there needs to be some space around it. And that pad is huge for the amount of pump track we're building, it's gonna have plenty of room around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike and I can talk about that, where it actually is gonna sit and is oriented in there to maximize not messing with the trail.
All right.
All right, thanks for your time, everybody, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Seems awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Good questions. Okay, now we're on to discussion item number 3, discussion with possible action regarding submitting an annual report detailing the activities of the board's activities. It's a little redundant. Who wrote this? In 2024, and conducting a board goal-setting session. Being new to the board, I'm not sure how that has been handled in the past. I think it's important that we do communicate with the city council on a formal basis by providing a report of what we have accomplished during the course of either a fiscal year or annual year. I have seen reports in the past that are on the city's website. I'm not sure how those reports were generated. Maybe I can get some guidance from some of you trusty old veterans on the board.
All I've seen is, I guess Amy, who was the chair, did it, and then Courtney just did it with input from the board, but.
Was it done on the annual year basis or on the,
And those ones are all in the drive.
okay. All right, so maybe, Mike, that is something you and I could sit down and take a look at.
Not saying that should be your responsibility at all,
Yeah.
that's just what's happened in the past, but
Okay.
I feel like pairs have taken on way more than they necessarily needed to.
Right. Mike and I'll talk about that, and we'll see if there's how we wanna handle it from the board standpoint. And then I think, just as importantly, if we're gonna be successful as a board, we need to come up with some goals to kind of help direct us and, have those goals eventually passed on to the city council for their input. Either
I think a
approval.
lot of it gets reported to the council through my public works report, to the public works committee, which then goes to council. So I think Chelsea, you're on that.
Yeah, no, he does a really good job of doing updates on what's happening.
Parks in my public
But
works.
then that could just be a consolidation maybe for the report. Well, that might,
Yeah, you can just pull out of each one.
yeah,
And honestly, I think it would be nice, especially as we have new council members coming, doing essentially a presentation to the entire council, like, hey, this was our success in the past year,
mhm.
these are our goals for this upcoming year. As the Parks Board, this is our, because then that way, when recommendations come, there's a frame of reference of why and where.
Right.
Because again, we do updates on these meetings, and like, this is the discussions that we're having, and those types of pieces, but to have like a little bit more formal one with actual reports, I think would be beneficial. Again, I think Mike would be a great resource in terms of, and also just going back on some of those reports you already have. And just don't need to recreate the wheel, just implement what you guys can put in place, so.
Good. And I think it's important too, as far as the goals, I mean, we're gonna have some flexibility in setting goals. But we have to decide if our goals are gonna be focused on projects, capital type projects, or are we gonna be talking about operation and maintenance? Maybe Mike has some issues that we can help him out with the board and bring it up to the city council's, attention. So we need to kind of think about those kind of items there. We're talking about projects only, we're talking about operations, and it also helps us down the road. I'm gonna use you as an example in a negative way, but I don't mean it as an insult, but, during the course of the year, projects come up, interest comes up from the community. We can't be all and do all. And at some point, we may have to say, great idea, but that may be a project that is set aside for, a future calendar or fiscal year, because we have a set of projects that we're gonna be working on. So I think in order to improve our efficiency and our ability to help the city council, we need to think about doing this. Now, has the board in the past done a goal-setting session?
Yes.
They have?
Session,
An exercise?
yeah, I guess an exercise.
I think when Amy made that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Google Docs that I need to get into.
Yeah.
We both do. This
I think just moving forward, as a board, right now, I feel like we have maintenance fairly well covered. Willie, he does a good job, he's fully staffed, and, we have a new part coming on board, hopefully, with Rocky Fork.
Mm-hmm.
We have a new
couple
Mike.
potentials, yeah.
Park,
You know,
yeah.
I think that's where your future mindset should be in terms of,
And that's why I'm suggesting that we have
I think.
an
in
exercise that
terms
we
of
can make
maintenance
those
right
kinds
now,
of
I think we're
determinations.
doing all right.
And I would just add, I'll give you a timeframe for that. Sometime March, April, May, be thinking about coming and making that presentation to the council, because that's when we're gonna be building and finalizing that budget for next year,
Okay.
from July to July. And so, here's what we've done, and here's what we'd like to do, can't we please have the money?
So I think what we're saying is if we're looking at having, developing a plan and going through a goal-setting exercise situation, that should really be based on the fiscal year rather than the annual year.
I think so, and I, like I said, I think you've got between now and March or April to organize and build that strategy. I think there's part of that is finalizing the stuff from the current fiscal year,
Mm-hmm.
but then I think you're building it from July to June. There's, we're
Yep.
looking a year in advance, and so we can prioritize accordingly.
So if we're looking at doing a goal-setting session and like a priority-setting session, sometime between here and March, targeting this for the next fiscal year. My suggestion is that we have a meeting that's devoted to that subject, because they can be kind of time consuming and when you start talking about projects and setting goals and setting priorities. That could be taking a regular monthly board meeting and devoting it just to that exercise, or having a special meeting. I don't know how that works in the city organization to have a special meeting.
Your preference, we'll do our best to accommodate it. If you, I think there's a certain to be said for using one or two of your existing meetings, if you think that'll accommodate it. If you think that's not necessary, we'll coordinate with the front office and find an open meeting that we're not stepping on another meeting's timeframe and do it. But that's you and your boards, you know, you're volunteering your time, what works for you.
Just a recommendation too, the sustainability board did this, and I thought that was really smart to kind of preserve time, was they sent in basically their top 5 wish list items, each individual from the board put that
Right.
in at the court ahead of time.
Prior to the meeting.
Yep, and so then that way there was already some
Yep.
priorities kind of established. And granted, sustainability board, a lot of them have been around for a long period of time, have a lot of the same goals that they've been working on year after year, so this is very different, but it could be beneficial to have like a pre-gaming session,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just like, okay, like, what are our priorities? Like, what do we want to be thinking about? What's the categories? And then coming in and really honing it in and fine tuning that.
Good point. Okay. Any other ideas or questions or input from the rest of the board regarding this?
Just a comment with Mike here, it's gonna be a lot different than previous. You got a lot of good input.
In a good way.
I appreciate all your input.
Yep.
And then the only other thing I would say is don't hesitate to take a couple of meetings.
Yeah, it's not gonna, that's what I was gonna say, is it's not gonna happen in one, so what if
No.
we were to say, we start in January?
Yeah, and just do.
And you could start canvassing us to put in the list to you indirectly.
Yeah.
Speaking of January, our meeting is on New Year's Day, so we need to do that.
And that's a problem, huh? Bring your party hat.
This will be a really good meeting.
Yeah. No, I think those are all really good points. Why don't we look at a January meeting? And I think you're all exactly right. I mean, we're not gonna have it finalized and everything in one meeting, but we can have one meeting at the beginning that's really devoted to the process, and then we can follow up with subsequent meetings as having that as a portion of the agenda to finalize it. So we'll shoot for a January meeting with, goal setting session. I'll start canvassing you folks for ideas. As Chelsea said, that we can kind of put in the bucket to talk about. Okay.
And don't forget to include Mike, because I know, for instance, one of Mike's
Mike will be
winter,
involved.
one of Mike's winter projects is we're looking at that roundabout and all the adjoining
Good.
kind of flower garden stuff around that and that to me falls squarely within this realm as well.
No, Mike will definitely be involved, Mike.
How does that fall into the Parks Board? Oh, 'cause it's trees?
Well, just
Because it's
that,
not a
the
park.
circle in the side of that was kind of, and I'm looking at the list that, Roger sent me, I didn't see it there, but I remember when you were doing your park park sponsors thing, I remember seeing, oh, it's still there, Highway 212
Yeah.
traffic circle.
It is.
So it was
Right,
just listed as one of those things.
Bee City, I think it started with Bee City or Tree City.
Well, no, it was tied to Bee City, and nobody had done the math that, you don't wanna drive all the
The bees across the road.
bees were across the vehicles on the road. That wasn't a good idea, but anyway, I just know that that's something that was on here. I know that it's something that has been identified to improve that going forward in a plan, and so.
Okay, good.
It falls much better under parks than streets budgetarily.
Yeah, I think it does too.
There you go.
All
I would
right,
also recommend that if there's ways to get community input prior, the same kind of way where you're gonna vet folks for items to be put in the bucket,
Mhm.
like have, you know, have like an inbox to where the community be like, this is my wish list item, and just to kind of get the juices flowing too.
Okay.
Especially if you start seeing like repeats, like that's where you start to notice that that's a community-driven project that needs attention.
And of course, also on top of that, the meetings are gonna be public meetings as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah,
But
just,
yeah, maybe getting some, community involvement at the beginning,
mhm.
good point. All right. We're ready to move on to the next session, next item. The next item is, discussion with possible action to recommend to the city council giving Alan Best permission to submit a community tree proposal grant to the Arbor Day Foundation on behalf of the city. The proposal to include a community tree dispersal event and hazardous disease dead street tree removal project. This was discussed, I think, at the last meeting. Alan was here, talked about, and Alan is here today too. Hello, Alan.
Hey, how you doing,
Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. We talked a little bit about the scope of the project, that the community tree dispersal event would be a scaled down project from last year. I think last year we had 100 trees in that dispersal. We'd be looking at maybe about 30 trees. And included in that, looking at, or working with, and Mike has already done this a little bit, our tree inventory that we did in 2017 and trying to ascertain where we have dead trees. Mike?
Yeah, I think I gave all that
Yep.
data to Alan.
Yep.
I think he gave us all you got.
So, but I think it's important that when we go through this process, that we make sure that we go through the proper steps and that we inform the city council what this proposal is, and yet let the city council have an opportunity to really direct us to whether they want that type of project or not, if they're interested in that type of project. So we're gonna leave it open for discussion.
Well,
Mike?
I say the same thing I've said the last 4, 5 meetings. I think we want to do an Arbor Day project. We use the inventory and remove the trees that have been deemed public safety hazards or dead or tagged as removal, and I think there's 70 trees on there. And we hire a contractor with that grant and just get it done. I don't know that we need any more tree dispersal. We put a lot of trees out last year, and honestly, we didn't get them all given away,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
are we required
I
as a
would-
Tree City to have an event like, an Arbor Day event?
Yes,
We are.
I think removal could be an
Yeah,
Arbor Day
so
event.
it just has to be the mayor making it.
I keep the plan tree.
Traditionally, there's a tree planting event. Now, that doesn't mean 100 trees. or-
Right.
I don't think
30
there
or
even has
30
to,
trees.
there doesn't necessarily have to be a
But it doesn't even have to be a tree planting event. It's kind
For
of,
the health and welfare of the trees.
right.
In Choto,
Be a
excuse me,
seminar.
we got grants for just this, to remove trees.
But
And
important,
it was an Arbor Day event. We got our Tree City USA certification.
yeah. But if you're looking at a grant, traditionally, there needs to be some public input and some volunteer effort involved in the grant to make it a worthwhile grant for Arbor Day Foundation or any type of granting source to be interested in help funding that. Might be difficult with a tree removal project.
What farm are you?
It might
Yeah,
be,
volunteer.
it might be difficult to have significant public involvement in just a tree removal
Unless it's to
event.
clean up, pick up stuff
Yeah,
and take it to the
well,
tree
clean up,
drop-off area, which would work.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
One of the things that I'll add, and this is probably as good a time as any, as we've looked at some of the lessons we've learned and good things and bad things. One of the things we're looking at is standardizing kind of our grant writing. So whether that be staff or whether we outsource that to, say, for instance, for the community foundation. I think one of the things we're trying to get away from is a half a dozen different people writing. It's really interesting when I get requests to back and write a letter of support for, and I've got 6 different grants going in for the same thing, and it's like, oh, And so I've talked to the Community Foundation, and what I think, so as we have people that are out looking for grants, Beth mentioned this last year, that our approach really should be, what's our objective? We want to do a tree cleanup. Let's go find the grants that support that, they're out there. When we find those grants, then we hand that off to a grant writer, whether that be a staff person. I haven't introduced Cal yet, I should have done that at the beginning, I'll do it at the end. Whether it be something that we outsource to Community Foundation, but I think the goal is to kind of streamline that and bring that functionality into the city. We'll take, suggestions and input, and recommendations from the boards. But I think part of it is, there's a need identified, let's get rid of trees. That's point of, let's identify, dead trees. Yeah, let's get rid of health hazards.
Yeah.
And then we say, that's the need. Now, how do we go about funding that? We look for that. And then I think the recommendation, kind of going back to the way you had phrased the motion, is, council, we're on board with this recommendation. We recommend it. We'd like you to go about doing that. And then, and by the way, we found a grant, or you go find a grant, or find it from there. So I think it just puts a lot of that back more into the staff and into the city bucket.
That's that seems really nice, but it also seems like if there's people that are really excited to write grants, like Alan, like, I like that process, but, or like BTA. Yeah, yeah.
And we've done, and in fairness, we've asked BT to help, but we actually hired that out too. We actually hired that to Great West. One of my larger concerns, and I'll do my best to make sure this doesn't come out negatively, although I realize the potential exists. One of my concerns is if we have different people in the city going out and identifying and starting on grants. You may have noticed, we had a really busy year in Red Lodge this year from a public works standpoint. And in that, what are we at now, 9 or 10 months that Mike's been here, between 2 or 3 different projects, a month of his time has been spent helping volunteers chase down things. So for instance, the solar one we just did, he's got 40 to 60 hours helping do that, when in the reality, at the same time, we were trying to get streets buttoned up and get stormwater and stuff in. And so that's why I want to be able to hand that off to, whether it be Great West, as we did for the Beartooth Trails, and we may have somebody that they're working with and is supplying with them, but my biggest concern is, how do we streamline it so we're not redirecting city resources away from what their primary functions are for the nice-to-haves and the add-ons. That's my concern. I'm open to suggestions and ideas. But as I've looked at the issues we've had, I've talked a little bit with Mike on it. I've talked a little bit with the Community Foundation. I've talked a little bit with Roger. Just kind of come up with, what is our repeatable process that's scalable, as opposed to having something that comes up and suddenly it's the hey Bob support, right? It's distracting from the goals that people are there. So I thought I'd throw it out there. We're kind of moving that direction, and it's not to squash anybody, but I would always rather do this a little bit more to people than say, please come do more. But I also want it to be scalable, and like I said, I don't want to lose literally a tenth of my public works director's time in a year for stuff that the city didn't guide or direct.
Which gets back to goal setting.
Yeah. And again, and I think, Beth, I don't mean to pick on you, but you did a fantastic job of outlining it last year. You identified the goals, you say, here's the needs are, you go looking for the means to help accomplish those, and you plan and build that into everything else. And there may be something that comes up, the pump track or something, hey, let's do it in July. Well, one of the things we're gonna have to coordinate is, we're looking at putting streets in on the northeast corner of town, streets, curb and gutter next. That's a pretty big deal. And so when you say, oh, we need to have somebody from the Public Works Direct, they may be doing stuff for the city as a whole. And so I think, it's just human nature. When we have our project, we see that, we don't necessarily look at that from the holistic standpoint. And that's part of my job, is I have to look at it from the holistic and say, oh, this is just derailing that. Not because of bad intentions, just because not everybody's aware of everything.
We can't be all things to all, everyone.
Mike comes pretty darn close.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Well, I think you really bring up a good point. I mean, a lot of cities actually work with grant writing organizations, consultants that actually write grants for them. They get a fee for writing the grant. It's nice to have a member of the public write a grant, and Alan didn't make any money off that grant, that's for sure. But they also have the knowledge of other sources, grant sources too. So,
And they're professional. One of the reasons that we went with a professional engineering firm that's driving the trail down Brewery Hill is we want to succeed at that. That's a big deal. We want it to be successful.
so maybe we need to take a step back. Maybe the first decision is, do we want to limit a program or have an Arbor Day program that really consists of the removal of dead, hazardous, and diseased trees? For the first, that should be the first question. Second question is, how do we want to go about?
I think if we do that project, it won't infringe on my time that much.
Well,
That's a hands-off project, I've done those before. I have an inventory, it's on a map. I call a contractor, I get a bid on it, that price of the grant, if we get it. I hire him, he goes out and gets rid of it.
So kind of in your say, the first thing is we identify that, and I think to an extent, I think, unless anybody has countering opinions, I think that makes sense, and particularly before we do another tree study. So then we're to step two, all right, where can we get money for it? So now we go looking for that, and then if we identify a grant, we do that.
70 trees is a lot.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think,
but a lot of them are tiny.
yeah,
They're
they
the trees that got planted 3 years ago that died.
don't look
There's
good.
not
they're
very many,
6-inch
but
seedlings,
it's all in the
Less
inventory,
than that.
yeah.
the size, the deviation.
Yeah, I was very
Yeah.
impressed with the tree and
A
the.
lot of them are nothing, Willie will take care of
So,
those.
so is it possible that we do a hybrid right now? That Alan is willing to look at Arbor Day for being the source of funding for, I fully support what Mike's saying. I mean, coming with the experience, and that, you know, we've got lots of time down the road to plant trees. If we have an inventory.
We don't have more room for trees.
Yeah, so if we have an inventory, well, we have parks that are still rehabbing, and we have a new park coming on, and, yeah.
More around transport.
Yeah. Well, that's because our city's like a little taco shell, we don't have a lot of land down in here.
There we go.
So.
We live in the taco shell.
We
Down
do.
across the bottom of.
Never gonna
our
switch.
cake.
Diversity.
But I mean, I support what Mike is saying, and he's got the experience, and I think that's a big enough thing to chew, and what I'm also hearing him say is, this cannot become the volunteer public works project that we had last year. So with that in hand, we could maybe have Alan look at, we're not gonna do dispersal, it doesn't sound like I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone, but if we did go after the inventory problem of getting rid of dead and hazardous trees, and we solely do that, and Arbor Day would give us the money, but if there's volunteer work involved, then that's a no-go, and we gotta go somewhere else.
Alan,
It also gives us an opportunity to actually use our inventory.
yeah,
Right.
We've
Yes.
got 2 of them, and we've done nothing with.
yep.
Yeah.
And if the map's
I mean, and that's.
And we're gonna ask for new money to do an updated tree
Moving forward,
inventory.
If we wanna get another inventory.
I just think we
they're
need to
probably
add to
gonna
what we
ask us
have.
if we've done anything with it.
Addendums.
Let me ask a question. Alan, are you still there?
I am.
Alan, you've had some discussions with the Arbor Day Foundation people. You've ran the idea by them of tree removals. Do they seem to be interested in funding a project like that? It seems a little bit outside what they normally do. what kind of a, if you have,
The NRC will fund that as well.
well, okay, we probably have another source, but have you talked to Arbor Day Foundation about the idea of funding tree
Yes.
removal?
Yes, Shannon said that she would advocate for it, but she could not guarantee that there would be a source of funding because typically these are sponsored. For example, last year was State Farm Insurance or whatever.
Right, okay. And I think that's an important thing to remember. A lot of these projects by the Arbor Day Foundation are not necessarily funded through or by Arbor Day Foundation, but they find another party that actually provides the funding, and they kind of administer the grants. DNRC, Mike mentioned, it might be another source that maybe we should look at.
I met with the gal earlier this year.
Oh, you did.
She said,
I guess my 2 cents then, Roger, is, and I would direct this to you, is to have you work with Mike and say, Mike, what do you think fits into your workload and schedule and load for some tree stuff? And because that's what I'm gonna look for. One of the things that I didn't see it coming, but one of the things that I'll tell Mike is let me know when we need to say no. We've got a great resource. My job is to make sure we don't burn them out.
Okay, good, fair point.
and
Mike?
like I've said,
Or Willie.
repeatedly, I think removal project is a good project. If it's in the wheelhouse of Public Works, I think it fits in the wheelhouse of us moving forward with grants. We've actually utilized our inventory. We're showing we want to improve the health of trees and
Yep.
get rid of public safety
Yep.
hazards. So,
And it works in
and
Tree
it's, and
City.
it's an easy project, and if Arbor Day won't fund it, then I'm confident there's avenues within the DNRC urban forestry, there'll be money there.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I think that
we're
might-
pursuing, I can't guarantee.
No, but I think that's worth pursuing. I think it's worth pursuing it through DNRC.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily opposed, or like saying we don't pursue it through Arbor Day. Like Alan says that he's talked to him, it's just not necessarily guaranteed that it will happen,
Yeah.
and she can advocate for it. So, I mean, if he wanted to write the grant, we could write the grant, and then we could be told, no, that's okay, that happened.
But there's a second part. So just like we talked about when we were talking about the pump track, that dollars is a finite resource. I think an element that has not been part of our conversation up to this point that will absolutely be part of our conversation going forward is that staff resources is also a finite resource, and we have to factor that into things.
It is.
And I don't think we've done that up till now, and I'll take ownership of that for not recognizing that we were doing that. But now I'm aware and I see it, so it's part of my job to make sure that we don't
Yeah.
abuse, that we don't forget that that's a finite resource. And we can expand that by outsourcing, we can, that's one of the ways we can do it, but staff resources are a finite resource just as much as cash is.
And another finite resource is time. And we're kind of buttoning up the time here a little bit. So if we can move forward, and maybe the way we move forward is, let's let Mike take a look with DNRC and maybe get some estimates from contractors, what it would cost and maybe what kind of a grant might be, and let's maybe move in that direction is what I propose.
Well, I think asking Arbor Day, like Chelsea said, all they can say is no, they may not fund the whole project, but
But first of all, we have to have an amount that
Right.
we think we're gonna be asking.
that's,
So,
that's fairly
so
easy to
this
come
is an agenda item, I make a motion. But we make a motion, we have a motion could we have a motion on the floor
Mhm.
to consider a 2025 hazardous disease dead street tree removal project? And that if Alan is willing to look at whether Arbor Day would do that and how much volunteer hour time is required with that, that he could come back and report on that. And that we can also look at a DNRC opportunity, but we focus on that and we don't litter it with anything else.
That's a very large motion.
It's recorded.
Well,
It's-
that's me.
Well, and we do need to give Alan, he needs to know how much we need.
Well,
So,
Mike needs to come up with that
right,
information.
exactly.
Right, so I think that's more of the motion, is make a motion to look into a 2025 hazardous tree removal project
And costs.
and cost. And that's the first motion.
The fir-
Once we have that project and cost, then we can take
explore
that
grant
to,
opportunities.
yeah. And so there's multiple places where we can take that.
Yep.
And before he agrees to it, then it could also be one of those things where we just do rough number back of the napkin, or is it like, hey, he calls, he gets a bid from a contractor?
Well, or maybe
Again,
we
it sounds
do
like
some
it's
of
not
them
gonna
this
be,
year and some next year,
well,
right?
For
again,
sure,
just-
but
yeah.
we're talking about for this year.
yeah, and all I'm saying is, in terms of his timeline,
Yeah.
and trying to preserve his time, is it an easy phone call for him to just contact a contractor and figure out what that's gonna cost? Or is this gonna be something that takes him 20 hours next week?
Well, let's
That's
not,
what my question was.
yeah, let's
So-
not get too far into details. I like what you said at the beginning, make that kind of concise as far as, identifying the project, asking Mike to get some detailed costs on it.
Yep.
We decide that's the project we want, and then look for grant services.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
I move. That's what she says.
We have
I
a
second it.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
I don't think I should go here.
I have to go to search and rescue.
Okay, all right, we gotta move on.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, next subject. Mayor, update on the Rocky Fork project. You have an update?
I do. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. So
Okay.
the reason that there's still a building down there is that the federal government says, don't do anything yet until we know exactly how much it's gonna cost and all the bits and pieces, and we have to do an agenda. So we did confirm, this week we got confirmed that the funding is still available. However, as of last week, it pretty much looks like this is gonna be spring, just because the hazmat and the demolition. But the RFCs are going out. There's 3 different parts of that project, all of which have to be known and funded before the first shovel can hit the dirt.
What's the
RFQ.
Request for,
RFQ proposal.
yeah, it's an RFP. Did I say C?
Yeah.
RFC is Tech Geek speaking, sorry, that's a request for comment, that's how BGP came around, never mind. And your private IP addresses, that's like, anyway. So there's demolition, there's reclamation, which is the hazard materials, and there's a bank stabilization project. So all 3 of those are being in the process of final bid out right now, because then we have to do an amendment to the funding source so that the federal government and the 25% state funding come in and hopefully pay for it. Now, what we're going for there is ground zero.
Okay.
So that's getting it down to zero. That's not about what happens next. The plan is, before we get to what happens next, 2 things are gonna happen. City meeting will probably do something big at the senior center for public comment to come in and have their comment there. Also, there's a hope that we will have a better feel if there's a likelihood that that conversation also involves the Eagles Nest property. So it's been mentioned that that process has been started. We're looking at a year away because of that funding cycle. So I can't say with any certainty that it's gonna happen right now. I can say that we are working with the property owner and filling out the application. Actually, we have all the information for the application. They're waiting to see which funding source has the money so they know which application to fill out.
Mayor, there's a small house in between the Eagle Nest. and-
It's actually all part of the
It's
same
all part-
acquisition. There's actually,
Okay.
I wanna say 7 properties there,
All owned by the same owner?
all owned by the same owner.
That's good. That's helpful.
There is a possibility, that one of those may be retained. But again, this program is not a strong arm force anybody into anything. It's an available option. I think what the city has going for it is I think this is one of the most likely scenarios for that owner to recoup his market value out of those properties. And so I think there's an interest there, so.
So if that happens, then all of that's contiguous with Finn Park.
Yes.
Yep, there's a bridge in the way, but yes, it is. It's an adjacent, and it could be all interconnected. So that's why I say that changes the nature of the discussion.
Yes.
Then we're gonna need more trees, so we can tree apply for Arbor Day.
But again, as we talk about planning and prioritizing,
Yep.
that could be 2 years away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking at probably demolition.
In the spring, it'll
in the
disappear.
spring- In the spring of 2025.
The goal, and I hung my hat on it, and I was wrong, is that it was gonna be gone before winter hit. We were told yes, and then they came back and changed their mind, and when the people with the checkbook change their mind, they win.
Yeah, they do. All right, any other questions from the board?
Update.
Okay, good update,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move on then. Update on the field park tennis courts improvements. Mike, Phil,
We've been puttering around over there.
you've been puttering around over there?
Yeah, we're learning. We're making things a little better. We're going to improve a little more, just fixing some of the busted concrete and stuff. We're gonna use the grinder, to, hone down that patch they put in on the far west court.
Yeah,
Because I've been told it's unsafe. But we're working down there and having mixed results, but we'll get it over time.
At some point, are we trying to patch together something that
I
cannot
think
be patched together, maybe
that
we need to rebuild?
conversation should start happening if that's what people want, and it seems like those courts get a lot of use.
You get a lot of use.
I think it's, something that's gonna take something like the pool.
Yeah.
Or coal miners, it's gonna take outside people and money. In my past, we redid a tennis court and we spent $400,000.
Yes, they're expensive.
By the time we're done.
Yeah.
So, but at the level that they get used, I think it's something people are gonna start talking about. And like I said, I think it's gonna take the kind of movement the pool had or coal miner hockey fields with some people getting on board, not just city. I think it's a good idea. That's how we did it on the tennis court. I did it for the Lions Club funded a lot of it, and they applied for and got a grant through the city. I can't remember who it was through. I think it was through the EDA, same people were getting the street grant from. But there's money out there.
Well, it still seems to me that there's, if we're looking long range, a rebuild of those courts.
Yeah.
No, right now, we're just putting Band-Aids.
I know, we're talking, we're banding now, we're putting our fingers in the leak.
Lipstick on it.
But, the larger view of rebuilding the courts and having a quality project out there, which
Yeah.
you talk about you'd like to see. We do have, I think, another opportunity we should, somewhere down the line, explore, and that's maybe some school district involvement.
Sure.
Some of their skin in the
I've never
project
been
as
able
well.
to find that MOU that talks about the school and the tennis court.
You haven't been able to find it?
No,
You couldn't find it?
There's not a signed one that I've seen.
Okay.
I don't think it got signed, but it's draft. It should be in our MOU list.
Well, even a
No,
draft.
Courtney.
They sent me all, I couldn't find it in there, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I could ask
I can
Courtney
send you
where it
the
is.
draft, I can send you the draft
So,
one.
Lindsay, Barb, you weren't at the meeting last month, and I wasn't either, but Barb Beck stated that the school might be able to help with funding, according to Lindsay Hoffman, and there are people excited to start fundraising. Is that, do you want to be in the midst with that?
I did call and stop by and talk to the athletic director today, Adam White, and I mentioned the meeting and asked him to come, because I think it's a great partnership, now that the school has a tennis team, and I would like them to be more involved. I think it's important to the girls, important to the community, but I can't make them do it. I would like to invite them to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be a big deal.
Well, and
this
Field
would be
School
part of
Park
the
is named
Pardon me?
because it is, part of the city, what is it? Help me.
Because we don't own it, is my recollection.
No.
I'm looking
It's
it up.
a
Still-
school property.
It's still school property, I think.
Yeah. When you have to put aside so much land for, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that whether I've been on the board or not, the tennis courts have been talked about for a long time, and I think we need to, as a board, do what we can to start looking at, and Mike, you addressing the Band-Aids. that's great, because there are, there's little things that can be done, but
Well, I think
I think it is a valuable project.
Mary,
Yeah.
It's right by there at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
it's always busy. I go by there a lot. Mary Dale mentioned that this might be an opportunity an item for the goal setting session, so let's kind of work towards that. Let's move
And that's
on.
why you're sitting down and having that, so you can prioritize and remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, right, this might be the only.
Let's move on. We have, park projects update. Mike, do you
So
have?
like
Yeah.
Mike said, right, it's gonna
Oh, I
take
got
like
one,
a
I got one.
outside,
I'm sorry.
like if Lindsay's excited to start like doing stuff for that, like.
Okay.
Just something that, like,
Yeah.
we don't necessarily have to like
Yeah,
start that.
I think a
process.
community initiative on that with, again, a nonprofit fiscal sponsorship type style where you have a board of directors that are actually out there trying to fundraise, put together the projects, and then it can come through the city. Again, same way as the pool, coal miners, all that. But anyway.
All right.
You go check with Sam first, Lindsay.
Okay.
You told me not to get involved tonight.
How many pint names can we have?
Okay, we're gonna move on.
Pickleball field.
We're gonna move on, folks.
Yep.
Mike, you don't have any updates?
I got a little bit on baseball field, baseball commission, they were really busy, and I honestly have been really busy, and I haven't got down to see if they made their goal, but, they had Grove Concrete donate all the concrete, and a contractor donate all the labor to extend the slabs on the, batting cage that exists and get rid of the deadly chain link, and Public Works Parks Department helped them out with some purchase of some posts. They're buying the nets for that, and then gonna put in another batting cage and, west and south of the bathrooms.
Okay.
And got all that moved out of there. We did move all that mulch that was there, and it's no good. It's actually long.
Deteriorated.
Madeline asked for,
So it-
before Mike was here.
It's gone now, but that's kind of exciting. I think in the end, we're gonna have some first-class batting cages, with all that's going on down there. They're also gonna do a pitching area to the west of the playground, and it looks good. One thing that I look at down there, and I'm thinking about it, as a parks project, maybe a public works, parks department project. Don't know how to deal with it, but when that playground got put in, they didn't do any dirt work first.
Yeah.
It was probably about 2 feet lower than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like hell.
Yes, it
Looks like
does.
a pool.
broke their arm there.
Yeah, and it looks like shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It should be,
We need to figure out a way to bring it up. I don't know if we can. I put in those kind of playground equipment before, and I haven't dug down and found if they did it right or if they stabbed in the ground, but there's a lot of landscape work that should have been done there.
Mike,
What
add that,
I think we need to reverse engineer and make it look good, because otherwise we're gonna have much nice stuff and then this crappy hole with.
put that in your gold bucket,
Yeah,
okay?
well, it is.
Okay.
And then I've also talked to the baseball commission. I had the same conversation I had with you guys, who want to look good. And we're talking about doing just some low dollar, lot of elbow grease stuff on the bathroom and concessions. Spruce it up.
Okay.
And the goal is to have a complex that,
I'm proud of it.
yeah, looks good.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right. In the interest of time, we have the park representative brief round robin. My thought is if you have something in the park that you're a representative, let's mention it now. If not, let's move on.
I do for
Okay.
Van Dyke. Still wondering if we can get the path fixed where, the Northwestern contractors rutted it out. It's just, just not good.
So
We'll take that on, because they are contractually bound. My understanding is that was part of their,
Yes.
come in and do the work and they would repair it. So
So who-
Mike's got that written down. I saw him write it down in the background.
Okay.
Well, and
We'll see if we can get a status for you.
The fence is still open and people are starting to park. I've noticed cars parking there.
You're talking about right against the road?
No,
Well,
pulling in,
they're
pulling
pulling
into
in.
that.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot as well.
So we just need to maybe get that fence put back and then hopefully get
Well,
it.
And
that's
part
their
of your-
job,
That's
too.
their job too, Northwest?
I would
They cut
think
it.
so.
They
Okay.
cut it, they should put it back.
And then the other thing is, we talked about it a little bit earlier, just the whole light pollution
Yes.
issue. Not just for Van Dyke, but the surrounding area. I've heard that you can see the glow from downtown, so, not good.
This is the northern lights, that's what you're seeing. All right, anybody else have any, a park issue? Madeline, do you have?
Not an issue, but the ice rink is in as of last Saturday. Yay!
Oh, okay, start off.
What happened?
Good.
The ice rink is,
Oh,
or
yes,
the,
I saw
not
that.
just the walls, not the,
Yeah.
not the water.
We're gonna move on to volunteer hours.
Yeah, and I'll make it quick. Okay, so, I'm glad that you brought that up, because
Oh, yeah,
I know that ICE would have a whole bunch of volunteer hours, because they have lots of people.
Yeah, I have the numbers, I just didn't send it to you,
Okay,
sorry.
all right. So I'm gonna spend one more month getting in touch with all of you again. But for instance, soccer spends about 95 hours a year, in that last year, on mowing, fertilizing. Little League spent 80 hours, doing all of that work when they had the soil and all that put in. DRTA does about 85 hours a year. Tennis court, James had estimated about 38 hours, and
He had more too,
but I finished at July 1st, because now we'll be on a new fiscal year. So I'm trying to, get hours. So, I mean, we're already at 300 hours, and I know there's a whole bunch more out there, because we probably need to take all the hours of the Arbor Day project. But especially for grant writing, if we put in that 600 to 800 hours of volunteer time on parks.
One question, Teresa wondered if, all of the volunteer hours that went in on the observatory in Van Dyke Park, could that,
Yeah,
Do you have
so
those numbers?
here's,
So I asked because, I don't know if you count the volunteer hours from the ice rink folks, if they're opening it to the public, or if somebody's there, or they're moving stuff around.
yeah.
But did you need similar hours
Yes,
for
that would
when
be-
we're open to the public and what we've done?
well,
For that?
so here's what I would say about that. Here's how I look at it, is there's a lot of volunteer hours to run a ball game. That's the user group doing that, and that's for their function.
Right,
That's not volunteer hours.
so you want volunteer hours for maintenance only?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, things that people do for the city property. So, I mean, anything that you do on maintenance around there,
That's a good
spraying,
distinction, actually.
right?
Development and maintenance,
Yes.
Yeah.
not event.
So if it has nothing to do with
Or
your
improvements.
events, but it is for preservation of the park, then I think that's a
Or
good distinction.
improvement,
Bricks and mortar,
yeah, bricks and mortar.
bricks and mortar versus programming.
Right. Well, we're working on an annual report that you can use to roll up into whatever you're doing for your.
Right.
Excellent.
And you can extract from there whatever you want, and I'll make it clear if it's maintenance versus,
Yeah.
Okay.
right?
So anyhow, if you send the volunteer hours that you collect,
Yeah.
send them directly to Beth.
And I think if you had volunteer hours for somebody putting something together on the observatory, since that's ultimately city property, the park is city property, but if you paid a contractor, that's not,
No.
Yeah.
that doesn't come in, yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to future agenda items. I sent out a correspondence I've had with, Al Bloomer, is it?
Yes.
Who is the chairman of the pool committee. I know Mike was copied on those, and I sent, copies of those, emails from Al. I'd like to have that subject put on at the next agenda. We'll talk about the pool operations and the transfer of the advisory authority from what used to be the pool advisory committee to our board. Any other items that anybody'd like to see on the next month's agenda?
That's a huge issue, so we'll have to talk more about that.
Yeah,
on the
well, it's
agenda.
gonna be a biggie,
I don't know what that
but that's
means.
why you put it on the
I
agenda. so
don't know if
that's
it needs to be that big of a deal for the Parks Board. I think it was just mainly so Lindsay could still have a voice from the school. Just,
What was
because
that,
it'll be
Mike?
a conduit so that she can communicate with.
Oh,
Yeah, essentially, you were just the commentary, like, it's not that you guys will be making the decisions and grading all that, it's all gonna be managed through the city as it is now.
Yeah,
Yeah, so.
yeah, it's just,
bring it back to
The-
the Parks Board, because it was there a long,
well,
long time ago.
it's a dedicated park.
Yeah, yeah.
And my understanding of the park or the pool advisory committee was that they were sort of a temporary task force type of committee. They had really, two really goals. One was to develop the plans, of a pool, the construction project, and to come up with the funding for the project. Those items have been completed. And now we're talking about the operation.
And so now it's just like, if somebody says, hey, I think Lions Park needs,
Yeah.
hey, here's Roger's number, call him up or go show up to the Parks Board and offer your input at the 3 minutes at the beginning or the 3 minutes at the end. And the pool is just there now as well.
Yeah,
Good thing will be on the agenda next.
okay.
And there's money,
And there's what?
money.
And there's some money, that's what we're talking about. All right, we have, citizens' comments again, 3 minutes total. Are you a citizen?
I'm a citizen.
Oh,
I have, three things I wanted to address. First off is, I really just want to sing Roger's kudos. I mean, I'm looking at the involvement of everybody here. This is fantastic and wonderful, and thank you all. And Roger, I think part of that goes to you having a well-constructed and on-focus meeting. The second thing, and I probably should have done this at the beginning, this is Cal Renner. So Cal was hired in the position that Courtney was originally hired in.
Oh.
So, technically, it would be like a front desk planner, but if you want to think of it as a planning assistant and whatnot. So he will, I'm not saying you're gonna get rid of me quite that easily, but like, he will be the staff person who's here, opening the building, running the meetings, getting all that sort of stuff, so you're not stuck with me. I may still come in, and that's, and nor do you get rid of Mike, because I like that I think that working with Mike in Public Works directly is working really, really well for this. But if you're on some of the other sustainability and some of the other committees, you'll see Cal there. So, Cal just started, or technically speaking, Cal will be starting in a couple of weeks, when his schedule and current commitments are revolved, but we went ahead and said, hey, you're not doing anything evening, come down and sit in on an exciting meeting. And so here he is there.
Sorry, what's your title?
Assistant city planner.
Okay, cool.
Cal, where are you from?
I live in Morrow right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
And his normal hours are gonna be, 8 to 4, during the mornings. He'll be working with Brian, doing a lot of the stuff, like accepting sign permits and kind of all the initial, building and planning stuff.
Working on park addresses.
Pardon?
Working on park addresses.
That may be something, well, that he's involved on. So, and since it's there, I'll mention that I've worked with Roger. I've got a list of parks from him. This is kind of, Teresa was working on a list of parks. I'm looking at all the different things, not only for our master plan, but we're trying to get park addresses, so all of our parks have assigned addresses. One of the conversations that came up, I'll just throw this out and get the feedback next time, is Coal Miners Park versus Coal Miners Baseball Field. Does that need two addresses? And the feeling was that did. There's one person who says no.
No, I think if you smack it in the middle of that parking lot, that's the address.
Yeah. So before we make the request, we'll come get the final feedback of this, but that's basically what we're doing, is we're putting together that list, and among other things, it's gonna say, yes, this needs an address. One of the interesting ones that I think is really entertaining is pull up Google Maps or Apple Maps and look for the Red Lodge Pool. Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the reasons we're doing that, is so we can get official addresses in. And then there was also some comment on signage for that have those signs posted so that people know where to go to do that. And so that was one of those conversations came up. Obviously, it's not unanimous, and so we'll see what those opinions are, but The third thing that I wanted to talk about,
Whatever you decide,
pardon?
whatever you decide.
No, well, not in a vacuum, right? It's what makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That there was some input from emergency services when we reached out. That was, Tom Coley I was talking to. In fact, Tom Coley was the one who raised that. Is that 1 or 2? And I said, I don't know. The third thing that I wanted to just kind of get the input from is we have had somebody who reached out wanting to do, the traveling carnival in town in conjunction with the 4th of July. Their first thought was in the parking lot up there, and it's like, that's not gonna work, that's already all
Parking
done.
lot of what?
Pardon?
What parking lot?
Like, parking lot where everybody parks for the rodeo,
Oh.
where all, it's like, that's not an option. They then came back and said, what about Van Dyke Park? And I said, no, that's an open space park with natural terrain, and you're not putting all your carny equipment up in there. But the thought that I had that came up about that was the possibility of the parking lot maybe down, at Coal Miners Park or something down there. If that's something, then kids can still get to it and go to it. I will talk with Mike on that, but it's,
We've got a lot of projects going on, we're gonna use that as a stage.
That's what I thought.
yeah, and that's good information, actually, and that's what kind of, and get other thoughts and whatnot.
Private land,
Pardon?
do it on private.
And by the way, private land has also been raised, and quite frankly, that would be my preference, because then it's not, so that if it's private land right outside of the city, like on the other side of the dog park or something, then it doesn't involve us in it, so I don't disagree with you. So I didn't know if anybody else had any other thoughts. I don't know that sort of stuff goes in
The
field
Lutheran
school.
Church just cleaned that nice space across the ditch from their church.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be.
Anyway, that was, if there's any other ideas that anybody has, I don't want to linger this meeting any longer, but if you have any other ideas, please shoot me a text. I'd love to hear them.
That's my idea.
For 4th of July? Yeah.
No, for the party, we're going there in August.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good time to do that.
Use the
Fourth of July and rodeo, there's already too much.
Yeah, we
way
don't
too
need
much.
it then, we need it in August, we
Yeah.
need it in September.
Did you
We're adjourned.
All right.
Hey, so I have a question,
Okay.
you know, like, I don't need it. Yeah.
Good answer.
Yeah, but, no, it's you guys are.
Yeah.
So it's been fun.
Oh, yeah.
So this is what I did before. So I think somebody should bring up some.
We're not in a rush.
You understand that. Don't leave me, sir. Oh, by the way, one of the things we do is we have to remember to go in and end the recording.
Should I mute them?
Yeah.